I think from the time I close the room, they technically have like 30 seconds to a minute to come back. So
great.
They're probably deep in conversation. It's a good thing.
Let's hope. Yeah, I don't know. Again, every time we do this, it's different. Is there a way that I could have been bouncing in and out of different rooms? I didn't see any of the breakout stuff.
Yeah, so let's see. I think that as a co-host, you should have the ability. Well, actually, no, I think it might only be the host that has the ability to do that. So we could have temporarily made you host and allowed you to do that.
No, this will work. I'm only seeing 4 participants.
Yeah, Olivia,
total.
I think you have to make me host again because it said that I closed all rooms, but then it came back up. So I think I need you to make me the host temporarily. I'll do that.
Or maybe they just all left.
Or that's possible. All right, here we go. Let's try that. Okay. So they should be filtering back in now.
There we go. Yeah.
There we go.
Oh.
All right, welcome back, everybody. So hopefully you were able to chat with your new teammates and be creative and come up with a new market product that's going to blow up and you're all going to become extremely wealthy entrepreneurs. What I'd like to do for time purposes is if one of you can go ahead and just put into the chat box the name of the product, the function briefly, and then the price point. And I want to save our conversation time to hear from a few of you, given what I just shared around styles and diagnosis and applying this new or, refresh on how we help with the collaborative engagement process. What type of things did you experiment with? What worked? What connections did you make between the information I had shared on the front end and then as you went into this creative problem solving activity? Were there any aha moments around your style or around how you collectively went through this exercise? Anybody wants to share?
I think for a short amount of time, it would be good to be a bear.
A bear.
So
okay, great. Sorry, say more, please. I didn't catch who was sharing that, but I heard a bear because there was a short amount of time. All right. Apologies for cutting you off. How about somebody else? Because I'll come back to that comment because I think that's a great insight. But any other insights?
We have one in the chat that says "My cup of art," $4.99 at your nearest under 5 stores.
All right. I really like that. Well priced, so it can fit in a niche store. My cup of art. Yeah, I'm guessing it has something where you can draw the outside of it.
Actually, no. So hi. Sorry, apologies. I kind of joined this session a little late, but I had really great team members who got me up to speed, and we were able to pitch something. And as you said, we did have an aha moment. So we was talking about what all a cup can hold apart from beverages. And from there, I think we led into how we can make it as an art project or a DIY for children. So essentially the kit is the cup mug. A mug could be paper, could be ceramic, depending upon price ranges. And then we would have like sequins or like glass or like seashells. which basically can be like my cup of art. Like you can use it as a decorative item. You can also use it to hold pens, pennies. I actually have a mug right here and I use it for pennies. So we thought that that's something that we could make use of that. And how we price it is that we can easily get mugs, even ceramic mugs, for $1 at dollar stores. So just keeping that all in mind, $4.99 seemed to be like not very expensive, can be used for a quick activity, even like for birthday parties, like for children, people use that a lot. So that seemed like a decent idea.
Excellent. Sounds like really thoughtful ideas and looking at the market. So all good business strategies. And if you could you just share a little bit about your process? You said you had joined the session late, but in your 8 minutes, how did your group come together? How did you communicate? How did you make decisions? Very briefly describe the process.
So we started off by just we just said whatever we thought the moment you had put the question up, and it was the three of us, and all three of us were just brainstorming in terms of throwing things at there of what we were thinking. And I guess from there, the most obvious thought was, if not beverages, what can it hold? From there, someone said like, Bindu said that my other teammate said that, okay, it can hold seashells. That led to the fact that why not put seashells on the outside? From there, it led, okay, why instead of making it a decorative item, let's go one step ahead and give it separately and do it a DIY kit. So it was more like a step-by-step process rather than jumping. And I think it was all three just playing off of each other's ideas and energies that led to, my cup of art.
That's great. And you know what I like what you said there, that last piece about it was a bit systematic, but you also had big ideas. So it seemed somewhat organized in your process. And, again, this is a fun exercise. So the consequences aren't quite as great as, bringing together the different NGOs. But, recognizing what somebody said earlier, that, this situation, short amount of time, might require somebody to be real directive. And whatever you brought to the group, if you're not the type of creative person that can quickly come up with the new ideas, could you be the time manager? Could you be the person that's checking in for the nonverbals and see, does everybody have a chance to share their ideas? And that's this collective collaborative process of figuring out, what can I do to help move the team forward? I may be a bare directive person in all aspects. If I run the emergency department at Hopkins Medicine, I may have to be really directive most of the time. But am I aware enough and in tune with my team enough to know that, well, right now I'm not an expert on innovative cup ideas, so I'm going to take a different role. And that's what this is all about, is really paying attention to every situation and thinking through, how can I do this differently? How can I know what's going on, know what my team needs, and help them move forward? One thing that we're working on right now with my colleagues at the business school is this innovative approach to leadership. Now, it's not brand new, but it's pulling together different evidence and research-based ideas around leadership and pulling them together in a tool that everybody like you that's in the working profession and moving into different industries can use a tool to help you navigate any situation. And we really focus on 3 different dimensions of leadership. First, we start with your people. What type of empathy and how much empathy do we need to make sure that we show towards our people in any given moment? Now, a lot of my work is I take companies and students into the wilderness, and we do wilderness adventure travel. We climb mountains and we kayak rivers and oceans. Now, there always has to be a certain level of empathy because you want them to feel physically safe and emotionally safe. However, if we are in the middle of a hailstorm, lightning storm, and we need to get off the water and to shelter, my empathy may look a little differently. We don't have time to sit around and hug and reassure each other that we're going to be okay. We're going to need to move quickly. And I can do that respectfully, but it's going to look different than if we're working on a project and we have plenty of time and somebody just needs to take a break from the project to take care of some other stuff. So that's the people part of this. The technical piece is your specific industry skills and professional skills that you bring to any team. So somebody in the last exercise that we did might have some real business skills around product placement or product development or pricing structure. You might be more financial minded. You might be more marketing minded. As a leader, positional leader or non-positional leader, it's always good to go back and be like, where can I contribute here? Not just with empathy and style, but what skills can I provide? If you're put into a group project, are you the one that's going to put together the fancy PowerPoint slides? Are you the one that's going to create the spreadsheet so the data makes sense? What skills do you bring? What technical skills do you bring to the situation? And how much is needed? And then in all of this, this goes back to the situational approach, is how flexible do I need to be right now? Do I, as the leader of this group, do I need to be firm and say, nope, we need to move. We need to get this done. We need to get it done by this deadline. We're going to have to stay late. So that would be less agility. Or do we say, hey, we have some time. Let's rethink our process. Let's maybe change things up. Let's hear new ideas, different opinions. So agility is really important. And at any given time, good leaders are paying attention to these three dimensions of this situation. The way we like to look at it is you're flexing your agility, competency, and empathy. Right now, do I need to demonstrate a low level of empathy and a high level of competence to get my group through this crisis? I need high empathy and high competency because people are scared, nervous, uncertain. And we have seen this, and this is really where the model evolved from, was through the pandemic. We saw different businesses and organizations really try to figure out, how do we take care of our employees? How do we provide a certain amount of agility and flexibility to allow them to work from home, to work different hours? But we also, as a company, need to make sure that they're doing their jobs and that the competency, we still need a high level of competency. And we have to be empathetic that if they have children, spouses, partners, pets, how do we really just almost do a data point on this axis of what is my approach right now? And it's multidimensional. It's not just either or, it's on a spectrum. These would be the data points. So there's we would call this the leadership box. This is the frame within which you are working in. And here, relatively high competence, high agility, maybe lower empathy. And is that going to help your group get through this situation? So in addition to flexing your leadership, how do you continue to grow in all areas? And this is through professional development and your graduate schooling and reflection on your previous experiences. Growing your leadership allows you in any situation to be mindful and do that diagnosis application. Okay, I know that in this situation, this is what I need to give attention to. And the more you do this and the more you reflect on it, you're growing your ability to do it more quickly and more responsibly. So you're flexing and growing your leadership behaviors at all time. Again, this may seem abstract, but to put it into context, how do we move forward with this? How do I take this information and put it into practice today, tomorrow, next week in your different organizations and schoolwork? One is be comfortable and familiar with diagnosing the situation. This should almost be like muscle memory, intuitive. The more you do it, the more intuitive it's going to be. Is like, okay, pause. What does my group need from me right now? And then growing comfortable with experimenting with different applications. If you're so used to just always being that nurturing person, you don't ever want to lose that completely. But how do you complement your nurturing relational behavior and start experiment? How can I be relational and directive at the same time? How can I be assertive and task-oriented while also taking care of my people? So experimenting with different behaviors and getting feedback on that. And then really within a group, it's this awareness of I don't have to do all things at all times. I don't have to be the finance person, the marketing person, the operations person. I don't have to be the directive person, the system person, the idea person. Trust your group. And really through that early stage meeting that you have, oftentimes we call it the forming meeting. If you're familiar with forming, storming, norming, and performing, before you get into the project, pause for a moment and just talk about this stuff. You could even go through the scenario of, okay, what skills does everybody bring into this project? And if you really wanted to be creative, ask them, what are the different influencing styles that you're comfortable with? Is it task oriented? Is it visionary? Is it, even using the animals is an easy way to break the ice. But you have to have that level of trust and commitment from everybody that you want to move forward with shared language and communication structures. So the challenge ahead is how do you make this work for you? Because there are as many different definitions of leadership as there are people who think there are leaders. But hopefully through some of the stuff that I presented here today, you can start to connect it to what you already know works for you. You can be comfortable, experimenting with different leadership styles and approaches. And really, if nothing else, I'd like to leave you with this idea that it's a leadership mindset. As much as you think about getting the job done, and as much as you think about the technical, detailed tasks that are in front of you in this collaborative process, if you can also give the right amount of attention and intention to how you're going to influence the group moving forward, knowing that you're likely going to run into some challenges, personality challenges, accountability challenges, timelines, resources, all of those pieces that we know can trip up a group. How do we use this leadership mindset as a way to get us quickly back on track and hopefully performing at a higher level? So I would leave it there. We have a few minutes just for questions, comments. How does this work for you? What are you going to do with this information? Is it mumbo jumbo garbage? You want head shaking no, so thank you for that, Sandra.
So Mike, I did have a question. For I guess, because many are students and they might not have had these opportunities yet, what are your kind of top tip of advice to do to kind of think about being leaders within their groups, whatever they are?
Sure. So yeah, if you haven't had a lot of experience in group projects or really flexing your leadership styles, I would first go back to this idea that you can lead from any position within the team or group project or organization. So it really is that risk taking to empower yourself to believe that you can help shape the process, the collaborative engagement process. And that does require a bit of a risk. You're putting yourself out there to challenge people to have a conversation around, how you're going to get organized. So I would say, well, that's the first piece, is take that risk to do the little L leadership. And then from there, anytime that you start to sense that things just aren't working. You get that gut and you're feeling like this is not good. This is not enjoyable. We're not getting it done. Just hit the timeout button. That would be one tool I would encourage everybody to use. Use your timeouts. You have unlimited number of timeouts. Just call a timeout and ask the group to step away from the task and just regroup. You don't have to have the answers or even know how you're going to facilitate the conversation. All you got to do is say, hey, I'd like to just pause and get everybody back on track. So those would be the two suggestions I would say start with. And Marianne, I know you have a hand raised there. Love to hear your thoughts.
Yes, I think it's more of a question too. I've been in group settings wherein there are a group of people who are leaders. So basically everyone in the group is leaders. So I think how would you suggest, or what would you suggest for groups wherein they are all leaders? How should they work together?
Yeah, so this is very common in graduate programs, all type A driven, highly successful, motivated leaders. I would just embrace that. In your first meeting, the faculty member, professor gives you the assignment, you all huddle up in the back of the classroom and you realize like, okay, we all have big ideas. We're all used to being in charge. Just have that conversation and say, and really this comes down to roles clarification. You can all be really powerful leaders, but let's start clarifying roles. How do we delegate and distribute the workload to allow everybody to be leaders in their own way? And this really comes back to that competency piece. Individually, what I have found that works best in myself and working with groups, if you're seeing a lot of dominant leadership from a lot of different people, you can counterbalance that by asking questions, by listening and asking questions. And in some ways, you start to model the way for everybody else to maybe not just talk directly at each other or over each other, but just model that more subtle leadership approach of checking in with people and asking questions. So that, again, they teach entire 8-week and 16-week courses on leading teams. But to really boil down that dynamic of when there's a lot of strong leadership, you don't need to speak louder to be heard. Oftentimes you can just be a little more gentle and I'd say ask questions, but also to be effective, it's building your own individual relationships. If there's 6 people in the group, can you build 5 different relationships and have appropriate side conversations and check-ins so you build a deeper relationship with each one individually and you know what triggers them and what motivates them. But that's a great question and a very common challenge. And we see that in sports all the time, right? The NBA or the NFL puts all the all-stars on one team. I think the Lakers are doing this right now. They can't win, even though the 5 starters are technically all all-stars and potential Hall of Famers. So it's got to be something more than their skills and their talents.
Thanks, Mike, for that.
Any other thoughts, questions? I'm going to stop sharing so I can see some faces. We're about up on time.
Hi, I think a couple of us had a question about how do you deal with potentially passive aggressive, hostile, unsympathetic supervisors?
If I caught the last part, from supervisors?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. I'm guessing, there may be other opinions here from others on the call, but passive aggressive behavior is really toxic. And we know that. And if we can identify it, I think one of the golden rules in this is it feels like passive aggressive. It sounds like it. But how do we assume the best in that person? If it feels like passive aggressive, how can you actually ask that person that's behaving in that way to get some clarity and understanding? And this also takes risk and could come with consequence with your supervisor. But how can you craft, if you were to have a one-on-one meeting with your supervisor and really put it in front of them to say, you know, I'm not understanding what you're saying and what you expect of me. Can you be more clear on how I can be successful? And again, that, you know, personalities and power dynamics are difficult, but you can only own your emotional and mental reaction and your communication and your actions. So if you're experiencing the passive aggressive behavior, the only way for it to stop is to address it directly with the person that's doing it, and in extreme situations, maybe go beyond that. But the power of asking questions and putting it back on them to clarify and explain their behavior and why it is the way that it is, can maybe expose the deeper reason why they're being passive aggressive. Struggling to come up with a specific example right now, but you know, a good leader, non-positional leader, should always feel empowered to respectfully and appropriately challenge inappropriate behavior. And there's always a way to do it without the threat of losing your job. We don't always know what that is. And that's where, you know, seeking some coaching and some advice from colleagues and mentors can really help you through the specific situation. But the old saying of what you resist persists, if you resist addressing that behavior, it will persist and it'll probably get worse. And the person that's demonstrating that behavior will see that you're going to put up with it. So that's not an easy answer, but I would say find that authentic, respectful, appropriate way to ask that person what they truly expect of you.
Actually, that answer was perfect because it also puts kind of the onus on you. You have to rise to the occasion and be that leader in your own life. I loved it. Thank you.
Sure. And what we know doesn't work is, you know, responding to that behavior with your own passive aggressive behavior. And then it's just this vicious, dangerous, toxic cycle where nobody wins. So, yeah. I'll leave you with maybe one resource that I really like to use. It's the Leadership Challenge. It's a book by Kouzes and Posner, and they talk about 5 practices of leadership. And again, that's through years and years of research and data collection and synthesizing really the 5 practices that any leader can tap into at different times. It's modeling the way. So no matter how difficult things are, you just take the high road and have that ethical, appropriate behavior. Encouraging the heart. Find a way to always be encouraging and positive, even in difficult times with difficult people. Enable others to act. So in that situation where you have a lot of, you know, type A leaders, delegate and find ways for people to get involved and help them feel connected to the task. Inspire a shared vision. You know, when things get down in the nitty gritty and you're under pressure, how do you remind people why we're doing this, what's ahead, what we're working towards, and get them inspired and maybe re-engaged into that commitment. And then the last one is challenging the process. You know, when you don't agree with something, what is that appropriate, respectful, right way to share a different idea or to suggest that maybe what you're all agreeing to has some flaws or some consequence to. So model the way, inspire a shared vision, encourage the heart, enable others to act, and challenge the process. Again, it's one of many thousands of books out there, but the one thing I like about this is it's tangible and those phrases stick with me in any situation. Which one of these 5 practices should I be focusing on right now? So I'd leave it there.
Thank you so much, Mike. This was very insightful, and thank you all for attending and for your participation. I will be following up at the end of the day with an email, and we will make sure to include the slides from today from the presentation on collaborative engagement. Our next session will actually be happening in half an hour, so At 3:30, you will have the opportunity to hear from Maya Nadasen about using data for storytelling. Thank you all again for attending today, and thank you for your time, Mike.
Yeah, thank you all. I enjoyed it and I wish you the best. And please be in touch if there's anything I can do to help you along your way.
Thank you.